Hello and what is up YouTube? My name is G3Iron and today we are about 14 days away-ish from the release, give or take a few hours, from Path of Exile 3.8 Blight League. And today you all voted on our topic for what we were doing. We were changing up the schedule a little bit because the 3.8 announcement was so exciting and so many different things to chat about. And so thanks to everybody that participated in the poll. Today we're going to be going over an overview of some potential builds for Assassin, for Sabo, and for Necromancers that are for sure getting changes. Some maybe buffs, some maybe some nerfs or some tweaks or some adjustments that may need to be made. In lieu of actually having patch notes in front of us, we can't necessarily know whether or not any of these builds in particular are going to be better, worse, changed in any significant way. We just can't know that for certain. That being said, we're going to look at 2 Assassin, 2 Sabo, and 2 Necro builds that I think have a great chance to see a buff and to see themselves with a solid spot in the meta for 3.8 Blight League that comes out September 6th. Those of you that are new to the channel, welcome, and of course you can like, subscribe, and ding the bell for more videos and discussions just like this one. If you're a veteran, of course you know the drill. There are timestamps placed above my slightly balding forehead for your convenience to be able to jump forward or review any of our discussion points at your convenience. So let's jump right in right away. First off, we're going to take a look at a GC miner. This is put together by Zoroan, and all of these links are going to be included down below in the video description for your reading pleasure. So if you'd like to take a look at their POB or at the forum guide link yourself, you can do that on your own time. One of the reasons why I wanted to highlight a potential GC miner is, of course, Sabo and mines in particular are getting a rework to the way how they function mechanically in POE, and there's going to be lots of new build options that are available for what already is a very, very budget friendly and very, very strong DPS wise build and archetype, which is the miner archetype. So first off, this build guide host Zoroan starts off by saying this is just another GC miner. That being said, if you've seen a GC miner before, then you probably already have your own ideas and concepts about what it is. If you've never played a miner before, then this league might be the league to actually give it a shot. A lot of the complaints around mine builds is just how clunky and awkward it feels to place a mine and then to have to manually detonate it. Why wouldn't you just go as a trapper where you can simply throw your traps and they explode once an enemy gets close to them? Well, being a miner now in 3.8 is going to be a lot more smooth. One of the things that I wanted to highlight about Zoroan's particular build was just how well organized it is, and he goes into some very, very detailed explanations about exactly where the strengths and the weaknesses of the Abyssal GC Miner, his build, lie. So for instance, offensively, he uses physical spell damage to convert to elemental by using, of course, Glacial Cascade, which gives 60%, and the Long Winter Jewel, which gives you 20%. Due to the physical damage base, so we can use the Hatred gem on an Essence Worm to increase the damage even more and still have a large mana pool. Shimmeron offer a huge bonus DPS from the added lightning damage plus critical strike multiplier per power charge, with a downside of taking some massive amounts of lightning damage over time per power charge if you deal a critical strike. Hence why we're using a mine to deal damage, so we don't actually take the dot and we get a lot of the benefit from dual wielding the Shimmeron offensively. So this was a pretty creative way to say, hey, what are the offensive abilities of the Shimmeron, which used to be one of the most played with uniques? What are the offensive abilities of that particular unique and how to mess around and essentially take advantage of that without having any of the drawbacks? I thought this was really, really creative and I enjoyed it. A couple of things to note here on his pros and cons list. First off, very high DPS. Glacial Cascade miners are almost always the go-to for like the top 5% of money makers in any single league. So for those of you that didn't hear anything else about why this build might be interesting, if you're just interested in collecting currency, GC miners are incredibly cheap to get off the ground, which make them a great league starter, and they can kill everything in the entire game. Right? They scale with investment, but even with very, very little investment, with just as a league starter build, you don't have to build a second build to go farm content. You can scale up your GC miner. So very high DPS, high survival. He's got 7k effective effective HP, and you can have up to 20% maximum life regen when you detonate mines. It's very budget friendly, can run any map mine you can out and go, or any un-ID'd map. So early on in a league when you're needing completions and you don't want to risk potentially dying or losing XP or wasting a map on a reflect map or a no regen map, etc., you don't have to worry about any of that on this GC miner. 94% plus critical strike chance while the diamond flask is up, and you have 6 power charges, so you feel very satisfied when you shatter enemies. Okay, a couple of cons. Flame Dash or Death Walk from Bubonic Trail and Glove Enchantment can cause lightning damage over time taken when you deal a critical strike, so take care. Remember, you don't want to crit. You want your mines to crit, which negates all of that dot that you're taking from dual wielding the Shimmerons, so you have to be aware of that if you accidentally crit with Flame Dash. Also, you cannot compare the clear speed to basically any of the other top tier clear speed builds, whether that's an AutoBomber, whether that's a Tornado Shot Ranger, whether that's Queen of the Forest anything, whether or not that's a Blade Vortex Shield Charger. Like, you're just not going to be as fast as a miner, and that's part of the trade-off of playing a miner. When you want to deal damage, another con is that you have to place a mine and then manually press the detonate mine. So it's 2 actions to require, to actually set off your damage instead of just one, like a trap or like a regular build. That's always been the case with mines. However, with 3.8, we're seeing some of the chaining effects come in. We're even seeing some things like the Skitterbot minions that are going to come along and help you out and occasionally detonate mines for you. So it'll be very, very interesting to see how some of the cons of the miner playstyle will no longer be cons. So highly, highly recommend this GC miner build by Zoroan. Some of you out there that are wondering why you don't make currency in a league, it's because you look at a build like this and you go, it doesn't really seem that exciting. And that's fine. That's fair. But if you want a solid build that's cheap, that can take out the entire Atlas, including Shaper and Uber Elder, this is a way to go right from the get-go. All right, moving on to our second build. This is by the LepreConMan. And he's got a great name. I love that because he's a con man, but he's a leper. He's the LepreConMan. So this is the Ice Spear Miner. It's the fun and fast machine gun simulator. It's a great league starter. So I've gone over a couple of different Ice Spear builds over the last year or so and just said, hey, it's a great gem. And when the 3.5 and 3.6 reworks came out, both for self-casting as well as just the spell update overall, Ice Spear has been a massive beneficiary of changes and buffs over the last year. So if you're looking for a miner that is going to simulate being an artillery general or a tank commander, this could be the gameplay for you. So here, LepreConMan describes it as, I've always liked the skill thematically at high range, high crit, but slow to fire projectile without any AoE component. Ice Spear used to be the equivalent of equipping your character with a long-range sniper rifle. Sadly, as the game grew, Ice Spear began to show its age and fell out of use in favor of faster clearing and better scaling skills. With the 3.5 update, Ice Spear has been transformed from a sniper rifle into an assault rifle, and it is a ton of fun once again, this build being no exception to that. I'm going to show you just this little GIF of what he looks like, and he says right here, I'll be blunt, I'm really bad at Path of Exile, so these videos may not be very impressive. I've written this guide in the hopes that someone who's actually good at the game will play it and take it to its full potential. If they want to provide better videos for me to post, that would also be very appreciated. Just take a look at the GIF. This is him taking down Elder, just straight sitting next to it, blowing up shotgun artillery, calling in the airstrike, and down goes the Elder. It's a pretty awesome build. Now, some of the more detailed stats about his required items. This is one of the reasons why this build, while it does scale very high and it can be very expensive depending on how you scale it, there's only one required unique item, and he goes into details on that item. It is the Tremor Rod. This is a staff, so it's a two-hander, of course. And the reason why this is such a big deal is, for me personally, why I chose to show this build is because this guy really goes into detail to say whether or not there's specific setups that you should choose and why those specific setups are better than others. So, for instance, using the Tremor Rod, he says, I ran my first Red Elder of the League for a guildmate using a 5-linked Tremor Rod. Though the 6-link is very much recommended for melting endgame content, While Tremor Rod is the only required unique, of course, there are others that I highly recommend. But why the Tremor Rod? It has that nasty 35% less mine damage modifier on it. The new version of Ice Spear scales dramatically based on the number of projectiles you're able to fling at targets. Using Tremor Rod, it always allows you to have multiple mines firing multiple projectiles, even during sustained casting, and allows you to fire your mines twice before they expire. I even ran a few simulations because I'm a nerd, and he's got a spreadsheet right there showing the benefits of using certain setups with a Tremor Rod versus using a setup without the Tremor Rod. So I really enjoy this particular build guide. Very, very well executed, very, very well organized. And he goes through and he simply shows you, look, here's all of the different stuff that you can use. Here's all of the different stuff that he uses. And of course, as always, it's a mandatory thing for me whenever I'm looking at a guide to follow for my own league start and recommending to you all, it's got to have how to level, a guide on how to level and how to actually ascend, when you should actually ascend, what priorities you should place in your ascendancies, and of course he's got all of that here. So big shout out to LepreConMan. I think this is a great guide. Those of you that are looking for something maybe that is a little bit more flashy than GC Minor, but maybe can scale up a little bit harder with a little bit more investment, Ice Spear Minor is going to be the way to go. All right, transitioning from Sabos over into the Assassin tree for our third build of the day. This is the Emperor Slayer's AutoBomber, which, quote, pushes the boundaries. So a couple of things to note here. This is an AutoBomber build. For those of you that have never played an AutoBomber build, the whole goal of an AutoBomber build is to go as quickly as you can, as fast progressing through maps as you can, in order to then rinse and repeat to go through those maps again. So if you played in Legion League and you enjoyed repeating glacial maps because you just wanted to farm one particular layout in order to get as much currency as you possibly could, if that's what your goal is, then of course this build is for you. Now, you're going to notice right off the bat from the gear that he shows off, I wanted to show this off right away from the get-go, so that way there was, nobody could say that there was any deceit going on here. This is an expensive build. You'll notice right away his dream setup includes a 6-length Coming Calamity, a massively awesome helmet that's been crafted with socketed spells, have critical strike chance, socketed gems deal 30% more elemental damage, socketed gems are supported by level 20 innervate, and socketed gems are supported by level 20 increased area of effect. You've got to have a ton of currency to either straight up buy that or a ton of currency to straight up craft that. So don't expect yourself to have this by the end of the first weekend. Oh yeah, and of course there's a headhunter included in the build, right? So this is an incredibly expensive build. That being said, AutoBombers are known for being incredibly expensive because they're incredibly fast. Those of you that have never seen an AutoBomber build in action, I would encourage you to take a look at his various videos here. He's got his video of his fastest Tier 16 Elder Toxic Sewer, another of an Abyss plus Bestiary plus Breach Tier 16 Elder Toxic Sewer, and then of course a video of a Shaper run using a single target setup. Now, for those of you that are wondering, okay, what are the mechanics that he's taking advantage of and what makes an AutoBomber an AutoBomber? Well, a lot of this is going to change here with the Ascendancy class because, of course, Assassin is getting a rework. So, while he's got this very detailed guide, which is always required whenever we're passing on a guide to you, I wanted to show this to say, look, this guide isn't probably what it's going to look like here in a couple of weeks because he's probably going to update it for 3.8, but it's going to get buffed and changed. And he does a great job of organizing everything, so you can really trust this guide creator that he's going to do a good job of explaining what this build looks like in 3.8. Now, on to some of his gem setups. The way how it works for damage. Basically, you want to stack as many auras as you possibly can and passives around you, so that way you can simply shield charge into packs, and as you shield charge into them, they explode through various different mechanics, including your heralds, including chaining different sorts of mechanics like Herald of Ice explosions, as well as channeling Herald of Thunder shocks to proliferate throughout an entire pack. These are some of the mechanics that AutoBombers often use. This particular build uses Hatred, Herald of Ice, Herald of Thunder, Shield Charge, Summon Lightning Golem, and Vol, Grace, or Haste. And of course, what you're going to be doing, ideally, is flying through straight line maps, as linear straight line maps as you can, flying through them with as much pack size as possible, exploding everything, and then simply reaping the rewards. It is a great playstyle. I have enjoyed whenever I've played an AutoBomber. Again, have to make it very, very clear to you, AutoBombers are expensive to tool up. There have been AutoBombers that I have played that have costed literally dozens of exalts, and they're meant to farm like tier 10 and below maps. So they're not necessarily a boss farmer, but they are very, very good at what they do, which is rinse and repeat the same map over and over and over again incredibly fast in order to pay off all of these expensive things that you need to do. It's really a fun playstyle, and if it's something, again, that you enjoyed doing in Legion where you ran the same style of content over and over again, I would highly recommend an AutoBomber style of build, and why not try Bemodic's style, the pushing the boundary of Emperor Slayer's AutoBomber, if you're going to play an AutoBomber anyway. Our second version of Assassin builds to take a look at that are probably going to be buffed with the Blight patch is Alpha Blade's Vortex Asn Insane Clear Speed, 500k to 1 million boss damage build for his Assassin. Of course, you've got to appreciate his wonderful meme drawing at the very beginning, but the concept is very, very simple, and it comes across in the simple artwork that is presented. Hey, you're going to stack Blade Vortex, stuff is going to get crit and die. Here's his description. This Blade Vortex build is played as an assassin for the ability to chain Herald of Ice. The way this works is that the Ascendancy node Deadly Infusion gives us 2% base crit on our Herald of Ice when we are at max power charges. This is significant because Herald of Ice has a base crit chance of 0% usually. Now this, paired with a +3 base crit Shaper helmet, means that our Herald of Ice actually has a 100% chance to crit against enemies on full life, which means Blade Vortex offers decent single target to kill even tier 16 bosses, while the rest of the build, of course, just clears out the rest of the map. He's got a pace bin. Of course, all of this is going to be linked down below. Pros and cons of the build are as such. Great clear speed with Herald Chains, 100% crit against full life targets, which essentially means whenever you hit anything that you haven't hit previously, it's going to die. 5k life, 1k ES, Fortify, 60% evade with blind, decent single target, and it's not too expensive. The cons are that it doesn't have very many defensive layers, and you have to be in melee range in order to proc anything because Blade Vortex is not, massively 15 range Cyclone triple, Headhunter buffs style of AoE. It's relatively short range and relatively truly melee. It's not melee that you're using a melee weapon but firing across the screen. It's actually relatively close to where your character is and potentially can put you in danger. Of course, another con is that it is a Blade Vortex playstyle. Some of you love Blade Vortex playstyles. Wow, try saying that 10 times fast. Some of you love Blade Vortex playstyles and have played them all the way dating back to last year during Incursion League when the Triple Herald Elementalist was everywhere. I think everybody in the entire G3 guild had a Triple Herald Elementalist build at one point or another because Blade Vortex Elementalist was simply stupid broken. That being said, a lot of people didn't like it. A lot of people played it, saw how powerful it was, and still said, you know what? I don't like the Blade Vortex playstyle. I don't like having to stand still, charge up my blades, and then start rushing around the maps, then start actually feeling like I'm playing. And I don't like maybe getting through a couple of packs and then having to stop and recast my Blade Vortex. That being said, it's very, very fast. It's very, very powerful. I would say that it is a cheaper version of an AutoBomber, but takes advantage of similar mechanics in that it's very, very quick for clearing maps. And it's very, very good to start off early in a league because all you need is gem levels for the build to really scale because it's a spell. And so as you are building into spell levels, maybe taking advantage of the Cold Iron Point Dagger, which gives all physical spells +3 levels, that's a massive potential buff to the Blade Vortex playstyle, where if you're single wielding it, you've already got a Blade Vortex without being corrupted at level 23. If you corrupt it, now it's up to level 24. If you're using a level 4 Empower, now all of a sudden it's up to level 27. Anyway, you get the point. If you're dual wielding the daggers, now it's up to level 30. It's a lot of damage, okay? There's a lot of damage that's available here thanks to 3.8, the changes that are coming, the uniques that are being brought on. So there's a lot of opportunity here if you can deal with the Blade Vortex playstyle and having to be in melee range. I will give a slight warning here to anyone that will be playing hardcore like me. Assassins in general don't have many defensive layers. That being said, in 3.8 we are getting the new elusive mechanic that assassins are going to have. We don't know much about it today, as of today, but hopefully as more details come out about it, we'll learn that elusive actually allows for some hardcore players to interact with and play the assassin ascendancy. I'm excited and looking forward to that. Hopefully you are as well. Okay, so that's Sabos, that's assassins. let's stop wasting time with all of the other ascendancies that, frankly, I don't really give that much of a damn about. Let's talk about Necro. Yeah, let's talk about Necro. Okay, so 2 Necro builds that I'm really looking forward to trying out in hardcore in Path of Exile Blight League. First off, pure physical skeleton or zombie Necromancer. It's easily a million DPS on Shaper. It's solo self-found and new player friendly. So those of you that are saying, hey, what are the things that I should be looking for in a league starter? Well, it should be budget friendly. It should probably be new player friendly, so you don't have to worry about too many mechanics lining up and prioritizing which mechanic to take when. This build fits all of those particular desires and build goals. So Viperesque does a great job of going through and walking through exactly how to play a skeleton summoner. Pros of this particular build, other than just, being a necromantic horde and overlord of the dead. First off, the easiest million DPS build you'll ever make. At level 80, with level 18 gems with 0 quality on them. Literally almost no gear and no path of building trickery. The build reaches 1.04 million Shaper DPS. If every minion hits the same target, go see for yourself, and he's got a link for videos down below. You do not have to spend currency. You do not have to be good at the game. You really do not have to be anything special. All bosses, up to and including Shaper, just melt. You'll get at least 2 million Shaper DPS if you push the build with a few X of currency, and over double that when Vol Summon Skeletons is active. It's also a cheap build. You can get to red maps very easily on 20 chaos worth of gear and do all content comfortably on about 2x worth of gear. It's entirely physical damage, so you don't have to worry about about bosses having high elemental resistances. It's fast movement thanks to shield charge and a huge lump of attack speed granted by the spiritual command passive node, which, who knows, that might be getting changed with Necromancer, but we'll find out. You're mostly limited by waiting for your minions to kill things, but clear speed is still above average. I'm going to take a timeout here and say one thing that is very, very great and very, very helpful for us hardcore players, those of us that like to simply not die and play relatively safe. One of the things that's great about playing a summoner is because your summons are dealing the bulk of the damage, if you are having to wait for your monsters to kill things, you can spend that time manually dodging stuff that's coming your way. Whether you're in Delve and you have to worry about some sort of massive hit that's coming from either a boss or a rare monster that you see charging up its attack, whether you're clearing out maps on the Atlas and there's a particular boss that's got a particular windup that you need to watch out for. If there's particular ads, thinking about the different guardians and the different ads that they've got, you need to watch out for the stone golems on Minotaur or the vipers on on Chimera, or maybe the phoenixes on Phoenix, or just in general, even if you're fighting the Shaper and there's a bunch of ads that you're worried about, or if you're fighting Uber Elder and you're worried about the venom spitters, right? Regardless of what it is, if you're worried about ads or you're worried about things that defensively you're going to have to pay attention to, maybe you're worried about Shaper Slam while you're taking down Shaper. Because your minions are dealing the damage, you can focus on those defensive mechanics and your positioning in the game, which Path of Exile punishes players for poor positioning. That's what it punishes players for. And sure, having lag. That's the other thing that PoE punishes players for. Lag and poor positioning. So if you're focused on your positioning because your minions are dealing the damage, that is a massive, massive defensive layer that is not calculated in PoB. It's just a massive defensive layer that you can pay attention to staying alive yourself rather than having to worry about dealing damage and staying alive. Okay, continuing on. It's decently tanky. The build doesn't use auras for damage, so we can go mind over matter and get about 8k effective HP. Of course, you also have an army of minions, 22 in the full build to tank for you, and 10% of physical damage reduction courtesy of your zombies. No specters are necessary. This build only uses skeletons and zombies, meaning that you don't have to deal with any of the issues that specter builds have when it comes to raising the right mobs at the right level at the right place. And if something dies, you can just summon it right back. No drama, no having to leave the room. You can do all content, all map mods, although physical reflect is kind of a chore and no regen can be a little bit dangerous. It's surprisingly good at lab running, so take a look down below on the playstyle if you want more notes on that. Okay, lastly, the cons of this particular build. The clear speed isn't going to be as good as screen clearing specters or golems, especially if you don't have fear jewelry. On top of this, I will just say in comparison to the other two sets of ascendancies that we looked at, Necromancer and Summoners are not going to be as good at bossing as Sabos, and they're not going to be as good at clearing maps as the Assassin. That's just the reality of it. They don't pack as much single punch as the Sabo, and they're not as fast in killing things and clearing the screen as an Assassin. That being said, it's a happy medium in between the two. Another con is that a couple of bosses just melt your minions instantly and are basically impossible for the build, and Zeri Trio are the worst offenders. Lastly, half the level as a different build, SRS, unless you have access to twinking gear. So those of you that want to start this as a build guide starter, yes, you will start this as a starter for your particular league. Yes, you can transition it, but as you're leveling through the story and through the 10-act campaign, it is very, very dangerous to just rely on skeletons and zombies because they rely so much on gem levels. So they don't do that much damage to act bosses. They don't do that much damage to quest bosses, because their gem levels are really, really needed, and the number of skeletons and zombies are really needed in order to clear bosses. So you're going to level using SRS with it. That's what Viperesque recommends for his Necromancer, Summoner, Skeleton, Zombiemancer. Okay, moving on to our last build that we'll take a look at. I think this is an incredibly creative build, and we are relying on a couple of things that are actually new because of Legion League, and so I think it's fun. This is Stupidsmile's Ultimate SRS Minion Instability build. A whole bunch of us got excited about this potential build when this one particular unique was announced. This is the Tavaki. It's a coral amulet, and what it does is it gives your minions minus 17 chaos resistance, and then your SRS have increased duration, they deal increased damage, they have increased life, but your SRS take 20% of their maximum life per second as chaos damage. So back in the day at the start of Legion League, a bunch of us saw this as summoner players, and we thought, how can we use this to make a minion instability build that would potentially send out flaming popcorn bolts of death that at the end of their life cycle would explode and deal a bunch of damage? Well, Stupidsmile has figured out a way to do it. Very, very quickly, I'm going to show you what makes his build different. First off, he says, dealing 14 times the value of approximately the base damage off of your SRS is equal to about 25 million damage to the Shaper. Now, when I first read this, as always on almost every forum guide that claims big Shaper DPS, I was like, yeah, okay, dude, let me see it. He's got gameplay of both maps as well as boss kills of multiple Guardians and of Shaper. Highly, highly recommend that you go take a look at this because the damage is quite convincing when you actually watch it. All he's got to do is stand there and summon his SRS. The SRS act as homing missiles, homing in on their targets, and then when their life expectancy runs out, they explode and deal a bunch of damage. Now, that's the offensive side of things. In terms of defenses, he lays out, we have up to 13k energy shield with 700 mana, which is quite huge considering that ES got a nerf badly in 3.7. Besides that, the build has more than 40% physical damage reduction via auras, armor, and flask. Oh, and our leech varies from between 300 to 1000 ES depending on how many mobs we're being hit by in our area. Okay, so a couple of things that I wanted to say on this, and you're probably already picking it up. First off, Stupidsmile is clearly not writing from a perspective for new players, right? There's a lot of different layers of mechanics that are going on in this particular build. It's one of the reasons why I kept it until the end, because this is, in my estimation, by far one of the more challenging and interesting builds to try to put together, because if you don't get this right, it's not going to do anything. Your SRS are just going to be average SRS. They're not going to be SRS at their best, because this particular build does not focus on making SRS deal the most damage or last the most, etc. There are other SRS builds that do that, but this particular build excels on essentially summoning your SRS, sending them out to fight, and then watching as they explode and they just simply blow up bosses. They blow up map packs. So here's his main skills. SRS on a +3 minion gem helmet, right? This is not cheap, right? You're looking for like a bone helm with +3 minion gem, which I'm estimating for this particular league are going to be a couple of X, probably, depending on whether or not you're playing hardcore or softcore trade league. His support skills are going to be Stormburst, Casserole Channeling, Infused Channeling, Arc, and Flesh Offering. The reason why he's going to use Arc, and you can see it inside his videos that he uses, is of course to establish elemental equilibrium, where hopefully the resistances of the boss or of the pack that you're hitting, if you need it for a pack, realistically you don't need it for a pack, but if you're fighting a boss, you essentially set the resistances to Arc for lightning damage really, really high, and then it lowers their resistance to fire damage, which is of course what the Summon Raging Spirit is going to do. Then auras, he's got Discipline, Arctic Armor, Clarity, and Lighten in order to give himself some more better aura usage and quality. And then for movement, he's got Fortify, Faster Attack, Shield Charge. Now, He's got a path of building here that's displayed. Other things that you need to know about are his jewels. First off, he's got the Pure Talent Jewel, which of course is a really expensive jewel depending on the league. If a league, generally speaking, is more Scion friendly, then Pure Talent is a more expensive jewel. If it's not as Scion friendly, then Pure Talent is usually less expensive. So just take that with a grain of salt. Also, he's using an Elegant Hubris with a particular setup. Remember how earlier on at the very beginning of his particular build, he says, hey, look, I use the new Timeless Jewels and the mods vary from between 80% minion damage to 8,000% minion damage, okay? So depending on what sort of Timeless Jewel you get, that's going to scale up your damage considerably. He also uses Energy from Within and a triple rolled Watcher's Eye that gives you 31 chaos resistance while affected by Purity of Elements, 28% increased energy shield recovery rate while affected by Discipline, and 2.5% of maximum energy shield regenerated per second while affected by Discipline. The fact that regen is no longer locked behind, instant regen is no longer locked behind Occultist is great for this particular build. Yes, it's a bummer that it's no longer there and specialized for the Occultist, but it at least opens things up for other classes like the Necromancer to take advantage of it and to always be regenerating some of their maximum percentage energy shield. He uses 4 different minion Abyss Jewels, which are very, very important in order to scale up minion damage. This is by no means your budget starter build for the beginning of 3.8 Blight League. This is something that you go, okay, I'm going to start off with a Necro, or I'm going to start off with an SRS, and eventually I'm going to transition into that. That's at least something that I'm going to try to do. Then again, I'm playing hardcore, so I'm probably going to die 10 times and throw my hands up in the air in frustration. Anyway, those are 6 builds that I think are going to change massively, whether that's buffs, nerfs, or simply changes, alterations mechanically to how they may be played. But what are some builds that you think are going to be changed? Or maybe what are some builds that you're hoping get changed or buffed? Leave us a comment down below. And as always, I look forward to interacting with each and every single comment, enjoying our discussion together. And I hope that, well, maybe not today, but maybe September 6th. Yeah, that sounds like a good day. Maybe September 6th is the day a Mirror of Calandra drops for you. Thanks for watching that video. If you'd like more information on any of our discussion points today, you can see them down below in the video description. If you'd also like to join our Discord or support our Patreon, you can do so with the links down below. Thanks again, and big shout out to all of our Patreon supporters.